How are you guys doing? Today is Friday, March 11th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile for Andrew Robertson, also known as Andy Robertson, the elite Scottish defender, more specifically left back for Liverpool, turns 28 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to provide some focus and give you a sense of how Andy Robertson has been able to establish himself as one of the elite defenders, one of the elite soccer players in the world, when you in a league where you have tens of thousands of players competing for a very few finite amount of spots on the world's top tier clubs. I'm going to look at how he's been able to impact his team game in, game out, season in, season out on a micro level. And of course, I'm going to zoom out and see how he's been able to impact his teams on a macro level, as Andrew Robertson is a player that has won multiple trophies for Liverpool, and not to mention that he is a big part of the reason that Liverpool's had a lot of its dominance that it's had over the last 2 years, as Liverpool is one of the four teams that has advanced into the Champions League quarterfinals. I do think it's worth getting a chance to understand how good of a player Andy Robertson is. So I digress and get into his story. Originally from Glasgow, Scotland, he would go on to play youth soccer for Celtic and then playing for Queen's Park in the Scottish League before he officially got promoted to play for Queen's Park as an official pro. He would go on to play his very first games once he got promoted for Dundee United in the Scottish Premiership in his age 19 season in 2013-2014. In that season, he would start all 36 of the games he played for a Dundee United team that would finish fourth in the Scottish Premiership. In those 36 games he played, he would establish himself as one of the best young Scottish players. As a defender, he would even add 3 goals and 4 assists himself in his lone Scottish season before he would eventually get called up. But in that season as a defender, the team would concede about 44 goals in the 36 matchups he played, as they finished with 7 clean sheets. After that very first season, he would go on to make his very first international debut for Scotland in the 2014 season. And he would go on. He would go on to make one international appearance ever since then. But he has been on the Scottish national team ever since he established himself as one of the best young Scottish players in the Scottish Premiership. But following his age 19 season, he of course would find his way getting moved into the Premier League after getting moved for just under $3 million to Hull City. He would go on to play his very first season with Hull City in the Premier League in his age 20 season in 2014-2015. In that season, he would start 17 of the 24 games he played in a season where Hull City would finish with the 18th best record in the Premier League. Since they finished with the bottom 3 record in the league, they would end up getting demoted to the second to the second league that year. Not to mention, they would also get knocked out in the playoff stages of Europa League this year. In his very first season at Hull City, he would go on to finish with a couple of assists on the offensive end. On the defensive end, he and the team would allow 24 goals in the 24 matches that he played, as he ended up being part of the reason why the team would allow 6 clean sheets on the season. But following that season, Hull City would end up getting demoted, and they would end up getting knocked down to the Championship. That's the name of the league. In England's second division, in the Championship League, he would go on to start 41 of the 42 games he played in a season where Hull City would finish with the 4th best record in the Championship. However, they would go on to play in a final to get themselves promoted right back up to the Premier League in that season. In the season where they would see themselves get promoted right back up, Andy Robertson would see himself add 2 goals and 4 assists for Hull City on the offensive side. On the defensive side, he would go on to see that Hull City's defense would allow 26 goals in the 45 matchups he played, as he would go on to help the team finish with 21 clean sheets on the year. Not to mention that he was also able to add a goal in League Cup, as this season they would end up finishing in the fifth round of League Cup, as they ended up finishing in the fifth round of the FA Cup as well. They would not win those trophies, but however, Andrew Robertson would help Hull City get right back up to the Premier League. In his third season with Hull City, in his second year in the Premier League, in his age 22 season in 2016-17, in what would be his last full season with Hull City, Andy Robertson would start 31 of the 33 matchups he played for a Hull City squad that would finish with the 18th best record in the Prem, as they would end up getting demoted right back to the Championship League, at least yet again. In his last season with Hull City, Andy Robertson would finish with a goal and a couple of assists on the offensive end. Not to mention that on the defensive end, the team would end up conceding 50 goals in the 33 matchups he played, as the team would finish with 5 clean sheets in the games he played. He would play 2 FA Cup games in a stint that would see them end up losing in the 4th round. Hull City would end up losing in the semifinal of the EFL Cup, as Andy Robertson would make sure that they conceded 3 goals in the 4 matchups they played this year. Following this 2016-17 season, as Hull City was getting demoted, Andy Robertson would end up signing a deal with Liverpool, as they had seen him being one of the best Scottish players. And of course, he had built up a resume for himself, at least from an international stage, the best of what he could playing with Scotland. But his very first season playing with Liverpool would end up being his age 23 season in 2017-2018. His very first season with Liverpool would see him start all 22 of the Premier League games he played, in a season where the Liverpool Football Club would finish with the 4th best record in the Premier League, like I just said. In those 22 Premier League games, he finished with a goal and 5 assists. His 5 assists would be the first time he had 5 assists in a domestic season. Doing so from a defender position would be a very big feat for him. And in that season, the Liverpool defense would allow 16 goals in the 22 matchups he played, as he finished with 10 clean sheets. The first time he finished with a double-digit amount of clean sheets on the year. He would go on to play 1 FA Cup game, as Liverpool would allow 1 goal in a stint that would see them finish in the round of 4. They would end up losing in the 3rd round of the English Football League Cup, as he played 1 game in that stint as well. The team allowed 2 goals. He would go on to play 6 games in a stint that would see Liverpool make it all the way to the Champions League final. Once they made it to the Champions League final, they would go all the way to the end, where they would lose to Real Madrid 3-1 in the championship game. In the 6 games that Andy Robertson would play in Champions League, the team would allow 9 goals, as they had only 2 clean sheets in the 6 games that he played. But after that 2017-18 season, Liverpool would get very, very, very close. And after that season, everything, at least as a club for Liverpool, would really change, entering Andy Robertson's 2nd full season with the club. His 2nd full season at the club would, of course, see him joining Liverpool for his age 24 season in 2018-2019. In just his 2nd year with the team, he would start all 36 of the games that he played, in a season where the Liverpool Football Club would finish with the 2nd best record in the Premier League. That is the first time they've been runners-up since 2014. This will be a very big win for them. Specifically within the Premier League this season, he will go on to finish with 11 assists. This would be the very first time in his career he would finish with a double-digit amount of assists in a domestic season. The very first time many people started seeing him as an offensive threat like that. He would go on to make sure that the defense would concede 17 goals in those 36 matchups, as those 21 clean sheets would be the most clean sheets that he would have in a Premier League season with Liverpool. He would not go on to play with Liverpool Liverpool in the FA Cup or in the Football League Cup, as they finished in the round of 3 in both those tournaments. However, he will go on, or I guess Andy Robertson himself will go on to play in 12 Champions League games in a stint that would see Liverpool go all the way to the Champions League final. And this year in the Champions League final, they would end up beating Tottenham 2-0 in that final game. And with this win, this will be the first time since 2005 that Liverpool had won Champions League. So this will be a very historic win for them. And in this Champions League stint, Andy Robertson will go on to make sure that the team would concede 11 goals in those 12 matches that he played, as the team would have 5 clean sheets in those 12 matchups. Following this UEFA Champions League win in 2018-2019, the team would go on to win the UEFA Super Cup in the summer, and they would go on to win the FIFA Club World Cup in 2020 following that year. So they were able to win the 3 trophies that came with winning Champions League for the year. That is the only time that Liverpool was able to win the FIFA Club World Cup, the Champions League, and the Super Cup, at least since Andy Robertson had been there. But following the season, this would transition into his 3rd full season with Liverpool, which would be yet another historic season for Liverpool. In his age 25 season in 2019-2020, a year that was remembered by COVID severely delaying the end of the season, Andy Robertson would go on to start 34 of the 36 Premier League games he played, in a season where Liverpool would go on to win the Premier League title for the very first time since 1990. So having won it for the first time in 30 years would be the headline of Liverpool's season, as the Super Cup and the Club World Cup titles would of course come within this season itself. But within the Premier League season this year, he will go on to finish with 2 goals, and he had 12 assists. This would be the 2nd season in a row he would finish with a double-digit amount of assists in the Premier League. He has not had a double-digit amount of assists since the 2019-2020 season. Just to get a sense for how well he performed within that season itself. Now, in addition to helping them win that title, he would help make sure that the team would concede 31 goals in the 36 matchups he played. The team finished with 14 clean sheets. This would be the 3rd consecutive season he would finish with a double-digit amount of clean sheets at Liverpool. He would go on to play one Community Shield matchup in a game that would see Liverpool lose 1-1 in its Super Cup to Manchester City. It would end up losing in the 5th round of the FA Cup in the quarterfinal of the Football League Cup. And then not to mention that in Champions League, he would go on to play 8 games in a stint that would see Liverpool lose in the round of 16. As in the round of 16 in Champions League, Liverpool would end up losing to Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid would end up losing to Leipzig in the next round, the quarterfinals. RB Leipzig lost to PSG in the semifinals, and PSG would end up losing to Bayern Munich in the final. So that's how Liverpool's 2019-2020 Champions League season would end. But they would go on to take home the Premier League trophy, so that would be a very big year for them. Following that 2019-2020 season, after reeling back in with everything from COVID, Andy Robertson would return to Liverpool for his 4th season, his age 26 season. The last full season that he's played with Liverpool, he would go on to start all 38 games for the only time that he's done so in his career. He started all 38 games for a Liverpool team in the Premier League that would finish with the 3rd best record overall. After finishing with the 3rd best record, he would go on to finish with a goal and 7 assists on the offensive side. On the defensive side, he was able to make sure that the team conceded only 40 goals in the 38 matches that he played. He would finish with 12 clean sheets, as this would be the 4th season in a row that he would finish with a double-digit amount of clean sheets, at least while being a part of that defensive unit. The team will go on. He would go on to play 1 FA Cup game that saw Liverpool give up 3 goals. That would see them lose in the round of 4. They also lost in the round of 4. They lost in the round of 4 in both of their English Football League Cups. After playing in the Community Shield, they would end up losing on penalties to Arsenal, and then in a last-ditch effort to see them try to win a trophy, at least in the quarterfinals of Champions League, they would end up losing to Real Madrid, who ended up losing to Chelsea in the semifinals, as Chelsea went on to win Champions League last year. And that is the last full Champions League and even soccer season that would be played. Following his fourth season at Liverpool, Andy Robertson would go on to compete with Scotland in the 2020 Euros that would be played in 2021, a year later because of COVID. In the group stage, they wouldn't make it out as they ended up losing to the Czech Republic and Croatia. They ended up drawing with England, and because they didn't have enough points, they wouldn't make it out. This would be the only time that he would compete with his for his nation, Scotland, at a really big tournament. But following that 2021 summer, he, of course, would return for his fifth and current season with the Liverpool Football Club. At the moment, he's playing in his age 27 season for a Liverpool team that is currently sitting second in the Premier League, as they are sitting 6 points behind Manchester City with one less game, having played one less game at the moment. In the 20 games he's played, he's been able to finish. He's been able to add a goal, as he's had 9 assists. He's on pace to possibly beat his other 2 seasons in which he's had 11 and 12 assists within a Premier League season. One more assist would give him his third double-digit assist season in the last 4 seasons, specifically within the Premier League. This year, he's made sure that the Liverpool defense has allowed 16 goals in the 20 matchups he's played. So far, the team has 11 clean sheets, making it the 5th season in a row, or every single season he's been in Liverpool, they've had a double-digit amount of clean sheets. He's played a couple of matches in an FA Cup, and he's been able to make sure that that Liverpool's allowed 2 goals in these cups. In the League Cup, he was made sure that he's played 4 matches for Liverpool where they finished with clean sheets in all of those games. And then he's played 6 Champions League matchups with a Liverpool team that has just entered their way into the quarterfinal round after they were able to beat, or I guess considering in their first leg, they were able to beat Inter 2-0, and they were able to lose 1-0 to Inter in the second round to earn their way into the quarterfinal round of Champions League. Liverpool is one of 2 teams in England to have advanced to the next round as of right now, but Andy Robertson's a big part of the reason there, as in the 6 Champions League games he's played so far, the team has allowed 6 goals and they have 2 clean sheets within that span. But this leads us to where we are with Andy Robertson right now, as Liverpool is one of the world's most dynamic teams as long as Andy Robertson is playing left back. He has been regarded by many as if not the best player at his position, at least while Alphonso Davies is in and out of injury. And even while Alphonso Davies is healthy, many people will argue that Andy Robertson is more valuable to his team. And even though the argument is to be had, I do think that even being aware that the argument exists is being aware of how great of a player and how dynamic of a piece Andy Robertson is. If we're talking about the Scottish national team, and we're definitely talking about a Liverpool club that has worked as a well-oiled unit and systematically destroyed the Premier League. But with that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to all 18 minutes of this piece. I want to thank the Pro Football, the Transfer Marked, the Footy Stats pages, and the Wikipedia articles that I used for this episode. I wouldn't be able to get these facts and this data without them. And with this said, once all of today's episodes and matchups are done, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Saturday, March 12th, for another episode of The Elite. And hopefully by this time next year, I'll have a lot more to talk about when it comes to Andy Robertson's career. If you ever get a chance to watch him, I would recommend doing so. He currently wears number 26 for Liverpool. And with that said, thanks for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Peace out.